Hey guys, we're continuing our little video. So last thing we did was we folded these two pieces of paper so that we have 4 flaps, and we kind of folded them in a way that we made sure that these layers that we cut out are actually going to fit on there. Now, this foldable is kind of like can go either way. In other words, like you can have the stapled in being the bottom like this, or if you prefer, you could flip it around and have this one on the top. Whichever way you want it, it doesn't really matter as long as you got 4 layers and they kind of all fit on the flaps, okay? So I like to do it this other way though. So I'm going to set mine up like this. Before you glue anything down, I like to lay everything out to make sure it's going to fit. Once you get it laid out like this so that everything lines up, you can go ahead and glue or tape things on. I'm going to go ahead and tape them on. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, after you have these glued down, rather, we're going to put some labels on them. So all of these little labels right here, I'll show you where they go, and you'll either glue or tape them. Keep in mind, if you lost one of these, you could just write it with a pen or whatever. So right now, I'm just going to show you where they go. I'm not really going to discuss them too much, but we'll discuss them a little bit later in class, okay? So first of all, up here, you have the crust. So this crust on this side is called the continental crust. And before I glue anything, I'm just going to lay them out to make sure they all fit, okay? Then you have the mantle, which the mantle is this layer, this whole layer right here. So I'm just going to set this to the side. You have the atmosphere, which is up in the air up here. That's going to go up high. You have another crust called the oceanic crust, which is underneath the, what's it called? Oh, yeah, the ocean. So that one's going to go right there. And then you have another layer label that says continental crust, which you don't need to. I'm not sure why it was printed twice, but so you could toss that one. Then you have this layer called the lithosphere. Now I'm just going to sit it right here for now, and we'll talk about how to do that one a little bit later. Then you have the inner core, which is all the way at the bottom, and the outer core, which is here. And then, of course, you have the ocean, which is this water here. The layer we're missing is called the asthenosphere, which will be right here. Okay, so you got to be careful here because there's these layers that we're going to label that are actually multiple layers, like combined. So, all right, so now that we have all these laid out, but they're not glued in, I'm going to talk about the asthenosphere and the lithosphere. Now, the mantle can be broken into separate layers because it's a really, really thick layer, and the difference in temperature and pressure on the top layer, or the top part of the mantle, and the bottom part are quite a bit different, which causes the material in here to take on different properties because of the changes in temperature and pressure. So a lot of geologists will divide it into different sublayers. Okay, so all we're going to do is say, like, we're going to divide it into 2 layers here. So we have this layer, which we'll just call the upper mantle, since it's the very, very top part of the mantle. And then we have this kind of middle to low portion of the mantle, which we'll call the asthenosphere. Okay? Now, the asthenosphere is it's solid, but it's also kind of fluid, which means it's slowly over the process of long periods of time, it can slowly churn and go up and down. And we learned about this earlier. It's called a what? Everybody, class? A convection current. Okay, so the asthenosphere is where the convection currents happen. Now the mantle, we're gonna put a little bracket here so that everybody understands that the mantle is this entire section here. So you draw a little bracket like that, okay, before you glue it down. Now the lithosphere is pretty interesting. See, the lithosphere includes the crust, which could either be the oceanic crust or the continental crust, plus the top part of the mantle. You see, this part right here of the mantle, it's the coolest part because it's the highest up. So it's the coolest and the least dense. And what that does is it makes this part of the mantle a lot more brittle um, than the bottom portions where the asthenosphere is. And as a matter of fact, the crust and this part of the mantle are actually connected. They're like stuck together and they move as one piece. Okay, so this piece, which includes the crust and the top part of the mantle connected together, is called the lithosphere. So we need to make a bracket that shows that. So our bracket will go from here my pen's kind of acting funny. Hold on. I got a funky looking bracket there. All right, so this bracket should show that it's the crust and the upper or top part of the mantle connected together are collectively what we call the lithosphere. And so I put in parentheses here that that lithosphere is the crust plus the upper mantle. Now, once you have these all laid out and your brackets drawn on there, you can tape or glue them down. So go ahead and do that. I'm going to pause the video while So once you get all these glued or taped down, the next step is to add the little boxes that we're going to put the information in. So these are going to go underneath each flap. So for the inner core, I'm going to open this up, and now really you have all of this space right here. So you could put it on the back of the flap or the top of the flap, which wherever you want really, as long as when you close it, it covers that up. So you'll put the inner core, and then there's a box for the outer core. Put that under there. The mantle, and then the crust. There's not a little info box for, there's not one of these boxes for the asthenosphere or the lithosphere. Now, once you get those glued underneath each flap, then there's going to be a reading passage where you're going to read it and find all of the information to fill into the boxes there. And that passage will be posted on Google Classroom.